right, guys, so to start off with our history for today that you are doing for me, you have basically a review. So, as the answers to these questions come up, I want you to make sure that you are either, writing them down, taking some notes, because everything that you're going to see on these next 3 slides are going to be on your quiz that you're going to take from me in history tomorrow. All right. So that is why I'm doing this review, is to help you have a good place for your quiz. All right. So make sure you know all of these answers for me. All right. So let's just start off by me talking for a second. We've been talking about World War II. We've been talking about how there are two sides to World War II. There is the Axis side and the Allied side. We've been talking about the fact that all of these different events led up to it, that the United States wasn't a part of the war to begin with. We didn't come in until later. And then, of course, there's a lot of things that happened to make all that happen. So we're going to be expanding on some of that today. So a leader that rules by force, like Hitler, like Stalin, like Mussolini, they're called dictators, right? Did you get that word? Did you remember that word? If you didn't, make sure you're putting it in your brain. What country did Germany invade to start World War II? So remember, this was the country that they invaded, that Britain had said, if you invade them, we're going to declare war on you. Like, you cannot invade that country. And that country was Poland. All right. And if you remember, Soviet Union came in on one side and Germany came in on the other, and they took Poland very quickly. All right. And there we go. World War II had started. Which leads into our next question. Remember, at the beginning, Germany and Soviet Union had made an agreement, and they had said that they would help each other. They would be allies. But then Hitler kind of stabbed Stalin in the back. So what country did I just say? What country did Germany invade that they had a previous agreement with? And that was the Soviet Union, or Russia. Okay. What event caused the U.S. to enter World War II? That event was the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor, you should have watched some really interesting videos about Pearl Harbor last week. What did the U.S. drop to end the war in Japan? That was an atomic bomb. Okay, atomic bombs on 2 different cities, and it effectively ended the war immediately. Now, this part on your quiz tomorrow is going to be fill in the blank, right? So you need to know these leaders. If you take away anything about World War II, you need to make sure you remember your leaders of that time. The leader of Germany was who? Hitler. Yes, Hitler. Leader of Soviet Union is going to be Joseph Stalin. Leader of Japan is going to be Tojo or Hirohito. Now remember, all right, Germany is going to be a national socialistic country. They're going to believe in Nazism. They're going to believe in the dictator having all of the power. Soviet Union is going to be a communist country. Japan is going to be a militaristic country. So Tojo was in charge. He was the top military guy. But Hirohito, he was the emperor. But still, Tojo was above Hirohito in what was happening in Japan. United States was FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Italy was Benito Mussolini. All right, and he is also going to have a fascist country, which is going to be very similar in some ways to both Germany and Soviet Union's countries. And Great Britain is going to be Winston Churchill. So, thinking about these countries, there are only 2 countries in this war that treat their people with a democracy or with a type of constitutional monarchy. All right, they're going to treat their people with fairness. And those only 2 are the United States and Great Britain during the time of World War II. That's not what's still happening today in most of these countries, but it is what was happening during this time. So remember that even though our next question is going to talk about the Axis versus the Allies, you've got to remember that even though the Soviet Union did come into the side with the United States and Great Britain, it did not mean that our beliefs on how to lead our country were the same. Okay? So, name the World War II sides. What were the Axis powers? You should have 3 countries, right? Bam, you should know them: Germany, Italy, and Japan. The Allied powers are going to be the United States, England, and Russia. They are going to be on our side. So if you get asked this question, make sure you're putting Russia on the side with the Allied powers, because at the end of the war, that's where they were, right? They were on the side with the Allied powers, even though they started on the Axis side to begin with. Now, what we're going to talk about today is actually some pretty neat stuff, all right? We're going to be talking about some secret codes and new technologies. The way that this war was won depended very much on technology. When I say technology, you guys probably think about your computer and your cell phone. You think about your internet, your Wi-Fi, your gaming systems. None of that existed during the war. So the fact that they were able to develop some of these things is amazing. Most of you guys are going to look at the picture of this fella and know who he is immediately. I hope so. That's Albert Einstein, right? That is Einstein. He, both Axis and the Allied powers were racing to build more advanced weapons than the other. They were trying to get secret codes to send messages to people in different parts of the world. They were trying to get a weapon that could destroy another country that would make it to where they could win faster. Both sides wanted that to happen so badly. Einstein, he was actually a Jewish man that escaped Germany after Hitler came into power. So when we talk about the Holocaust in a few days, think about the fact that he was one of these escaped people, right? He informed President Roosevelt that the Germans were working on an atomic bomb. Now remember, an atomic bomb is a bomb that is explosive for up to miles, and it can destroy entire cities. We're not talking about little bombs that would just destroy a small area. We're talking about, oh, it's dropped on you and almost everybody in the city is going to die immediately. That's what an atomic bomb is. So he comes to FDR, he says, hey, they're working on this. We got to do it too. So he does it. Roosevelt says, absolutely, we are going to start working on building an atomic bomb, right? It's top secret. Nobody in America knows about it, right? They are building it in 1942. It's called the Manhattan Project. The vice president did not even know that it was being built. So while they were building this atomic bomb, and you can see the picture here, the Americans living, the soldiers fighting, they didn't know that we were building this bomb. This was huge news when it was finally dropped. So just think about that. Think about living in a world where it didn't exist. It's being built, you don't even know about it, and then bam, it's dropped. That's crazy, right? So you can see in this picture the different places where they would have been working on building different bombs and things for the country, right? The next part that was huge in helping us win the war was secret codes, right? So you might think about making a secret code with your best friend to send notes or whatever in class that I couldn't read. And they might, you might say elephant, and elephant might mean crazy, or I don't know, a secret code, right? So they were trying to send important military information that couldn't be intercepted and by someone else and know what it meant. So the Germans were using a machine called Enigma, and they thought it was unbreakable. But there was this brilliant British mathematician it was one man who helped majorly, but there was also others. He broke the Enigma code with the world's very first computer. This helped shorten the war because when he was able to break that code of Enigma from the Germans, they were able to know where they were, what their troops were doing, and what they planned on doing next. So, huge deal to break that Enigma code. Now, in the United States, we didn't have as great of an effect with the code talkers, like not building the world's first computer, but we did have some pretty awesome codes ourselves. And it was from our unbreakable code was from a Native Americans called the Navajo, and they were actually called the Wind Talkers, right? Nicknamed that. And you can see a picture here. They came through and they used soldiers. They used the Navajo soldiers, used their language to communicate and send secret messages. There was only 30 people. 30 people. Think about this. The 2 4th grade classes in 5th grade, 5 people out of those 2-3 classes wouldn't even know this language, right? It didn't have a written alphabet, But code talkers could send messages much quicker than code machines could, because they could pick up whatever device they were using, a telegraph, and they were able to send these messages, and the person receiving it would know what would happen. But only 30 people knew the language in general. So we were able to send a lot of secret messages using these soldiers, which is really cool, which was a really big part of the war. Okay. All right. So what you need to do is you need to study. If you want to, go back to the beginning of the PowerPoint, go through these slides again, watch me again, make sure you know the answers to these questions that are up here, and you'll be ready for your quiz tomorrow. Make sure you know your leaders, make sure you're reviewing those. That's your job today, is to make sure you're studying. Of course, get on Dojo, tell me you watched this video. Okay, friends? All right, good luck.